Hi everybody.
Hello, I'm Ryan.
I'm Bethany.
And we are Ryan and Bethany Board Game Reviews.
And today we're continuing our Tiny Epic series, and today we're talking about Tiny Epic Tactics. This is published by Gamelyn Games and designed by Scott Alms.
Alright, you guys, be sure to hit that subscribe button, that notification bell. We're going to be reviewing more and more Tiny Epic games, and ultimately we're going to do a list at the end of the year with all ranking every single Tiny Epic game ever released.
Correct. That's happening. That's real.
It's going to be awesome. Alright, you guys, so this one, Tiny Epic Tactics, we're talking about today. This one, basically, it amounts to, it's basically a miniatures game in a box.
It's a miniatures game.
Yeah, it's a Tiny Epic miniatures game.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you have these different factions. You have, a wizard, you've got a beast, you've got a fighter, you've got an archer, and you're all battling it out on this various terrain. Alright, let me show you what it looks like on the table. Alright, here is our setup for Tiny Epic Tactics. As you can see, in the middle of the board, we have this terrain. These 3D terrain pieces kind of all stacked inside of each other like this. I'm set up here for a two-player game. Basically, we've got two yellow figures over here, two yellow figures over here, two red over here, two red over here, and they are going to be battling it out in kind of a battle royale here in the middle of the board. As you can see, each player is equipped with a fighter, a beast, a rogue, and a wizard. Now, each one of those things is kind of shuffled up from this deck and chosen at random. So we've got a ton of different, wizards here, a ton of different of the fighters. We've got a whole bunch of the rogues, and then a ton of beasts as well. So what's going to happen is, on your turn, you are going to get 3 actions. Now, as you can see, we have 4 people, so one of them is going to get left out. Or alternatively, you can spend 2 actions with one person. However, then they get a weakened token. You would put that on that player or on that character, and then next turn, they would either have to lose 2 health to take that off of themselves, or else they just have to not do anything next round, in which case the weakened token would remove itself automatically at the end of the round. The actions are, first of all, you can move, and based off the card here, it's going to tell you what your movement is. This one has a movement of 3. But then also you can attack. There's 2 kinds of attacks. There is the melee attacks. This one shows here. It's got a sword there. So this is what it's going to do. It's going to do that many damage. This is, in this case, 2 damage. It's a melee attack. And you're going to roll 1 die here. Basically, what's going to happen is if you roll that symbol right there while you're doing a melee attack, you're going to be able to knock the other player back, or the other character back 1 spot. Other players, like a lot of the fighters and the beasts, might have a bigger knockback chance than your wizards do. But yes, you get a chance to maybe knock them back a whole bunch, in which cases they're going to have to spend some movement, or possibly get pinched between, at a wall, and they're going to lose some health that way too. Now, wizards have a chance to do spells as well. They actually have kind of a track here, a magic track on the far side here. This is going to go down and down the more magic you do. Alright, so this one kind of says what it does. In this particular case, it says conjure birds. All target in target range, or in range, take 0 damage, but they take 1 extra damage for each magic you spend. So when you do one of these spells, it takes 1 magic to just do it automatically, but then it says over here, you can do 1 to 3 more based off of whatever the text is. In this case, you can spend 1, 2, or 3 more to do 1, 2, or 3 more damage. And this tells you what the range is as well. In this case, the range is 4 for this particular ability. And this one also says, has an ability, targets of conjure birds cannot counter. So it's lots of extra text on here that you want to read as well to make sure that you're getting the full usage out of your characters. Now, those extra magic abilities don't just happen by themselves. You, once again, have to roll the dice based off how much of that magic you spent. And this time, you're looking for this symbol when you die. Roll the dice. So if you roll this symbol when you're doing one of those magic spells, that's what activates and does the damage or the healing or whatever that particular wizard's special ability is. So these are kind of multi-use dice. They do the same thing. You're looking for, when you're using them as a melee attack, you're looking for those red symbols. When you're using them as the wizard, you're looking for those blue symbols. But here, now, when we do an archery ability from either a rogue or a fighter, you're looking for not to roll one of the green symbols. All right, so here we have our ammunition up here. So when you do a ranged attack, once again, it tells you up here how much damage it does. This particular one does 2 damage. It tells you what the range is. This one has a range of 3. And it says roll 2 of your dice. All right, so if we roll this symbol, it's actually a bad thing in this case. It means that you missed, in which case you have to spend more ammunition to try again. You have to keep on spending more and more ammunition until you roll with none of those green symbols showing, in which case now you've hit and the person can take their damage. So, those are multi-use dice. Red is good for melee, green is good, or blue is good for wizards, green is bad for archery. There are a lot of modes of play, so what you're going to do in the competitive version of the game is what you're trying to do is you're trying to get points. Points come from a couple different places. First of all, having your own players not die is worth 2 points apiece. So it kind of shows that on the top of the card there, 2 points. That same 2 points applies for if you are able to knock someone else out with the other opponents. You capture them, and you get that 2 points at the end of the game. So, especially in a two-player game, dying really is a big swing of points. You lose 2 and they gain 2. It's a 4-point swing. So taking players out is a good way to get points. Now, at the end of the game, if you are also in charge of any of these little cities, sitting on top of one of those, that's going to be worth 1 victory point. But the main way to get victory points is to try to capture those flags. All over the board, there are little spots like this. This one just happens to be easy to grab. This is where represents the gray flag. There are 6 spots, and then there's one kind of a control button there that kind of activates this. Basically, if anyone is starting in the turn by camping on top of that location, it's going to say, all right, looking to see if any one player has the majority in that area. Let's say I'm the only one here and I'm sitting on that thing, then I do have the majority. In which case, this gray flag is going to move up 1 spot. You probably can't see that well, let me show you again. But basically, all 3 flags are represented over here on the side, and they can get a chance to move up. And then once they have moved up 3 times, whoever moves them up that 3rd and final time gets to collect it. It's worth 5 points at the end of the game. So even if I move it up, once and then a second time, Bethany swoops in and kicks me out and controls it for that 3rd final time, she's the one that's going to get the points. So kind of be careful how and when you take over those certain areas. Now, the way this is going to work, this is also the end game trigger. So the number of players minus 1 is how many flags need to be controlled for the game to end. So in a 2-player game, first time anyone captures a flag, controls a flag, that triggers the end of the game right then. In a 4-player game, then all 3 of those flags would need to be captured in order for that end of game to be triggered. There's a ton of different aspects to the terrain that I want to point out. So for instance, we have these forests over here. Basically, when you go into a forest, you have cover, so you have -1 damage when you get hit. Also, there is these things called peaks. When you're on a peak, it's like a little mountaintop kind of a thing. Basically what happens there is you have unlimited range for your weapons. As far as every other elevation change goes, whenever you are elevated higher, let's say we've had an archer that was here, and he's shooting at someone down here below him, he has a +1 to his range. And similarly, if he was down here shooting up at someone up here, he would have a -1 to his range. Whenever you are moving through a city like this, you get a chance to revive some of your health and all of your ammunition, arrows, and magics. That's really nice. When you first walk into water, it's going to cost you 1 extra movement. Getting out of water doesn't cost any extra movement. However, if you are knocked back into water, it's actually going to cost you an extra health. Similarly, if you get knocked back into a wall, let's say into the side of this or something like that, that's also going to cost you an extra damage. All over the board, you're going to see these kind of little arrows on top of terrain, and if you look at it from the side, they're usually some kind of doorway. Those are portals. Portals, you can walk through a portal and appear at the front of any other portal. So if we had our guy coming through this portal right here, he could shoot out way up the top over here. So that's how the portals work. We also have tactics cards over here. These are really nice things that can be really helpful. You start with one at the beginning of the game, but then at the end of every turn you also draw another one. Basically, these are things that help us out. This one says, climb to higher ground. There's always an if and then a then statement. This one says, if you climb with at least 2 allies onto elevated terrain in a single turn, and not by using a portal, then you can immediately perform 1 free melee attack action with one of the allies that just moved. This will not cause weakness and cannot be countered. So basically you're going to get an extra free action if you use this card. And if you use that, you discard it there. You have a hand limit of 2 cards, so every turn you're going to draw a new one. So eventually if you don't use them or don't fulfill the conditions that spend it, then you have to discard one every time you draw one. There are a bunch of different modes of play in this game, so I've only been talking about the competitive version, so that's the main thing I wanted to talk about. I will say that there's also a cooperative version of the game as well, or a solo mode. They play very similarly. Basically you have AI characters that are out here doing a bunch of damage to you and running around. What you're trying to do is to damage them, as well as, instead of walking through a portal to get through to the portal, what you can do is you walk into the portal, and then now you're in this little room. I'm not sure how well you can see it with the lighting, but you get to walk into this little room. There you go. And there's all these different traps inside there, but ultimately there is a gem. You need to collect all those different gems, and each one of these different terrain pieces has a gem on the underside of it in order to activate it. Once you've collected all the gems, you are declared the winner in the cooperative and solo mode. It is really tough though, and a lot of fun. But in the competitive version, basically remember the number of players -1, that's how many of those flags need to be controlled. At that point, that is going to trigger the end of the game, and then you're going to count up all your points. Remember, you're going to get points from how many people you still have alive, how many points from people you have captured, how many of the flags you've controlled, and how many of your people are standing on top of those cities. At the end of all that, whoever has the most points wins the game.
This game was aesthetically pleasing to me. I liked the 3D element of it and having all the things, and it made sense. The board made sense, and little arrows where the things were happening, so you knew where the other things.
The portals. You keep saying things.
The things and the things. Yes, the portals, and then like the areas for the majority control. Like everything was laid out nicely to where you understood it. But I liked the 3D aspect of it and moving your guys up these things and being at the top of the peak. And just aesthetically, I really liked that.
It looked super picturesque.
Yes.
Alright, so I liked how everybody had one of each of those factions, right? Between the wizard, the beast, the fighter, the archer, whatever it was. I liked how, the whole stack of them, though, you shuffle them up. Everybody gets one of each one of those things, but each one of them is very, very different. So each time you play, you're getting a whole different team you're going on this adventure with. And I liked how you could combine the different powers and try to find some kind of synergy between them. Maybe your wizard's a healer this time. Maybe it's not, but maybe it's got some kind of cool fireball ability. One time I had a beast, which beasts normally can't do ranged weapons, but I had a beast that could do a ranged weapon, but only when it was in water. That was cool. There's all these different effects and all these different strategies that you could do based off of which ones you had in those given areas.
I thought this game progressed nicely too. So it started. You have to move your guys. It's like a good 3 or maybe 2 or 3 turns before you can even attack somebody, because you're just on the opposite side of the board when you're playing a 2-player game, I should specify. But like it happened smoothly, right? And when you're moving those flags to progress the game, and you won't necessarily get those points, but you're making the game go further, or maybe you're just trying to prevent the game from going further because you're trying to get other people's people, just all sorts of stuff. And I liked how it just had a nice feel to it. I didn't feel rushed by the time the end of the game came. Like, I knew that it was happening, and I felt like I could have prepared for that, and so I just really liked the progression of the game.
Yeah, there was tons of modes of play. Almost seems like all of the Tiny Epic games, you just get so much game in this little box. There's just tons of replayability. And in this case, not only can you just play, the game that I showed you, which was the competitive mode, but there's also a solo mode. There's a cooperative mode. There's a team mode where it's 2 versus 2. There's just tons of different ways to play this game. And on top of that, there's also expansions, right? There's a Lanterns expansion where it's kind of like a pick up and deliver mechanism with these lanterns. Kind of like a mini expansion. There's also the map expansion. This provides 2 different maps. This one has the Savage Wastelands as well as the Winter Highlands. So basically this adds all new different places where you can battle, and they're all slightly different, right? The teleportation, like the portals are in different places. The peaks, there might be more peaks or less peaks. There might be the control areas aren't maybe necessarily all bunched together. They're kind of all, even though they're all the 6 different purple squares, but they're all like, in a stranger shape than just a block. So I really appreciated having more options there. Now, I will say that the base game that Tiny Epic Tactics had, the underside was those dungeons.
Yeah.
Which was really cool for the solo mode and for the cooperative mode. That did not, the map expansions, it was basically kind of like paper maps, and they were just white paper on the underside of them instead of having that cool inside track. So if you figured out how to somehow make a cooperative and solo mode with this map expansion, let us know. We'd love to hear how that works for you, because we really enjoy doing that for the base components.
So every time we play a game that is in any way, type, or form like a minis game, I tell Ryan that I'm not really a minis person.
A minis game,
not really like, and this isn't like this isn't a minis game. But it has like things in it, like similar things. But every single time I'm like, that's just not really my type of game. And then every single time I'm like, that was fun. I liked that. That was, that you could do stuff, and I had a lot of fun with that. And this one is no different. I really, really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. The only thing, like the co-op, I really liked the co-op, actually. It was fun to get those gems. I thought that when you're playing the co-op version, the bad guys or your opponents,
the AI could be
a little fiddly on like sometimes we had to like fill in some blanks, I guess, like not knowing
like
exactly where it was something was going or
who's the closest opponent, or should I move north with it, or whatever.
Yeah, so it was a little fiddly, but we were able to like just, you know, use reason and fill in the gaps there. But I enjoyed it. I liked that mode of play. I liked the competitive. It was just overall a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, I related this to a minis game experience. But it's not a minis game, but it gives me that same feeling inside, right? You have the different terrain, and you have different, you know, your range is increased if you're higher up, and it's decreased if you're lower, you know, shooting upwards, or whatever the case is. But when you do an actual minis game, you're usually having to paint. You know, a lot of people who are in the minis games are just wonderful painters, and we are not. Or pay someone to paint them. You also need to collect a whole bunch, right? You need to, you know, get all these different minis so you can have all these different factions. And you need a lot of space too. Those are usually big table hogs because it's this expansive terrain, which you usually have to paint the terrain too. This had it all in this super small package, like you saw. It gave me that same experience without all the hassle.
Yeah. And,
you know, obviously way more affordable price. But you still have the variability because... Variability? Is that a word? Variability. Variety. I combine variety and variability.
Yes. What'd you say?
I can't even remember.
Variability or
something like that.
That was awesome. That's a new word now.
But yeah, so because it has all this different variety in the cards, it gives it, you know, is the sense of you have 10 different minis of wizards, but they're really just one mini with 10 different cards explaining what it does that round. So I thought that was pretty clever. This game was a lot of fun. I'm not sure this is my favorite Tiny Epic game, but I did really enjoy it.
It's not like the best Western.
It's not the best one. It's not the tiniest Tiny Epic.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to stay tuned to the very end for our pounds and inches update. But until then, you can find us on Facebook, we're Ryan Bethany Board Game Reviews. On Twitter, we're Ryan Bethany 1. And on Instagram, we are Ryan and Bethany.
You guys, thanks for watching it. We will see you next time. Bye.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for staying tuned to the very end for our pounds and inches update. This is where Ryan and I talk about the things that we're doing to try and achieve better health in our life, or just how we're doing in that area in general. And I wanted to talk about running. Some of you who've been following us for a while might know that I like to run occasionally, and one of the things that's a little frustrating is when I'm training for something, I have to do other things. So what I mean by that is I can't just do miles. I have to do sprints, or I have to do hills, or I have to do speed work or lap work, just other things as opposed to just doing laps. And I know, like Tiny Epic Tactics, it's very tactical. It does different things for your body. When I am engaged in doing those other things, when I'm engaged in doing sprints or doing hill runs or doing tempo runs, I actually get a better time. So like it's frustrating because it's not what I want to do. You know, you feel like you get a better workout when you did X amount of miles and you're like, I did all this stuff, as opposed to, you know, a half-hour workout versus a 45-minute workout. But it actually makes a huge difference in my time. And so I just wanted to talk about that, how it's frustrating, but I know that it's like the right thing to do.
All right, well, very cool. Everybody, we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.